Welcome back to The Spark is Love. We have a really wonderful guest today, and I am so excited. I'm a little bit nervous because she has such a big repertoire, but she is a nurse and she is a human and she is fighting for humanity. Her name is Kathleen Bartholomew. She has been a speaker, an author, a nurse, a mom. So I'm just going to welcome her in. Welcome, Kathleen. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Casey. It's a thrill to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes. So I want to hear all about you. What made you get into nursing? What was your background?
Oh, that's a great question because it's certainly an atypical answer. I never wanted to be a nurse. The only reason I am in nursing, and I tell the story in my TED Talk, is because when I went to get a divorce, um, somebody had arranged with the lawyer that he would do the divorce for free if I promised to become a nurse. So when I walked and this was a man who I didn't even know about it. It was like a customer where at a place where I was working. So I walked into the lawyer's office, and instead of him taking out papers, he took out a Bible and put it on the corner of his desk and said, I'll do your whole divorce for nothing if you put your hand on this Bible and swear to me that you'll become a nurse. And so
Wow.
I did because I knew a good deal.
Yes, that was a good deal. And I actually had the privilege to listen to your TED Talk. Wonderful. And I think that leads us right into what you're doing right now in the space of nursing. We're going to put the links to your TED Talk on above. But what are you doing right now? You're all fired up. You've written some books. You've talked about a lot about nurses and advocating for healthy relationships within the nursing profession. But what are you up to right now?
Oh, well, if you look around my room, you'll see priority envelopes that are addressed to the White House, Jill Biden, the head of HHS. I am passionately working to transform and change the healthcare system with Nurses Transforming Healthcare. It's a group of 5 nurses who are just we all see the same vision, and that vision, of course, is Dr. John Silver's model for a public utility, adaptive public utility model. And just like you have electricity, we feel like everybody has the right to healthcare, and it should be just that simple. And we need to cut out the middleman. And when I share this idea with people, they get so excited. And let's just look at the last infrastructure bill that passed. It had $65 billion slated for broadband internet. So I do think that healthcare is just as important as broadband internet.
You are all fired up, and you are a force to be reckoned with. I love your energy. I love your spark. And I thank you for speaking out for the nurses. I don't want to jump around, but I want to get to this book that you wrote because I was mentioning to you, I started listening to it, and I quickly realized that this is a book that every human being should listen to because it's not just, even though you're specifically speaking to nursing culture, it is absolutely needed for humanity right now. So the name of the book is called The Dauntless Nurse. What made you write it? What inspired you?
Oh, that's a great question. So about 5 years ago, I put an ad in the student nurse newsletter, which goes out to 65,000 people. And I asked the question, tell me a story from your clinicals. Any story from your clinicals. Tell me a story from your clinicals. And about 80, 75, 80 nurses responded. And I had promised a free book to the first 20 people who responded. And that book was a book I had written years ago called Stressed Out About Communication, And so I started reading the stories, and then I just started crying because I realized that the profession that I loved so much wasn't going to exist. The vast majority of these stories were stories of new nurses being humiliated and embarrassed. The most frequent one was when they would come up to the nurse's station and hear the nurse right in front of them say, "You mean I got to work with a student today?" Or rolling their eyes or saying, "Gosh, you mean students are here today?" And just, a lot of nonverbal gestures. And so Dr. Martha Griffin had spent her career really working on something called cognitive rehearsal, which is a tool. She actually taught her students how to respond to these gestures. She had them role play it. She had them practice it. And the result was that, her 2-year retention marks were, in the upper 90s, because they had the tools that they needed when they walked into the culture of healthcare. And research shows that people who graduate with a nursing degree have the same amount of self-esteem as those who graduate from the School of Business or the School of Language or the School of Science. However, as soon as they get into the profession, their self-esteem starts to fall because they don't know how to handle these nonverbal tactics, which aren't conscious in the first place. They're just part of our culture. I mean, in the book, Ending Nurse-to-Nurse Hostility, which is really a very, that's for people who lead departments and leadership positions. It explains the entire etiology and the solution of this phenomena. But it comes down to one word, Casey, and that word is power. So when people are overpowered, they unconsciously attack each other.
Yes. I love how you went back in time to the actual beginnings of nursing in the Victorian era, and how the things that was subconsciously passed through times, the words, the things that people say. And I said, even before I was a nurse, I heard these things like, as a girl, you're not supposed to handle this, or don't rock the boat, just let it be. Just these little things that they really nip away at our confidence as human beings.
Yes, like a woodpecker, they just chip away at it, and it has a lot to do with being a woman, and a lot, because we don't even realize it, that girls are basically learned to be passive aggressive and subtle. They pass notes. A boy will just punch another boy out, but there's a reason we started passing notes and just didn't punch each other out. So it's really fascinating, and it's not about nurses in the end, like you just said. It's about being a human being. And I think I recorded that book in a hip hop studio where the guy in dreadlocks after the 4th chapter just said, "Oh my gosh, we all need this." And so I challenged him to write a hip hop song about it.
Yes, he might do, because I think it speaks a lot to the culture of humanity. And when I was reading your book, Kathleen, I thought about, as a nurse, you're fighting a war for nurses, but I don't think humanity realizes that nurses are the last stop for kindness. Doesn't matter who you are, what you are in the world. When you're helpless in the bed and powerless, a nurse holds the power to be kind to you or ignore you. Like, a nurse, the nurse is the last stop in humanity, for anybody, for everybody. And I just thought, nobody better than a nurse can really verbalize the depletion in culture, social culture, as a nurse.
Well, I just think that this is the civil rights movement of the 21st century, and the things that nurses do for patients. I wrote an op-ed in the Seattle Times years ago saying, I was washing an old man's back, and when he burst into tears, it was because his wife had died 22 years ago and nobody had washed his back since then. And I talk about all the things that are not charted, and all the things that there are no billing code for. There's no billing code for caring. There's no billing code for kindness. There's no billing code, because when there's no family member and somebody is dying on our floor, we firmly believe that no one dies alone. And so if a patient is in there, then somebody must be with them. That's not written anywhere. And we don't pay for that. But what's it worth to people? What is that kindness and caring worth? Because the time we have to offer it is just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking as nursing becomes more and more intense. I mean, so what we do is free, like pennies on a convenience store counter, just there for the taking. And then we don't understand. I don't like the reputation that we're the most trusted profession. We should talk about that, because people don't understand where it came from. So where it came from was a study on in the United States, and sociology is my background, the word meme, M-E-M-E, it stands for a cultural meme. And the meme for nursing is mother. The closest thing to a nurse in our culture is mother. And so there's a problem with that because mothers aren't paid. They're not professionals. They don't have to be, it's not highly intelligent skill. So I think we've done a disservice. If 10 years ago we had started rebranding our profession into the most respected instead of the most trusted, we wouldn't be in this position today.
Let me just repeat that. You said we need to be most respected, not just most trusted. That
Right.
I just repeat that so that just sinks in because that is very profound. I'm a new mom. I have a baby. He's 1 year old.
Oh,
And
congratulations.
thank you. And I really I don't say I disagree, but I think as a mother, I think being a nurse and a mother, I see a lot of similarities because my mom was awesome, but I had no idea what she did. And when I had a baby, I said, "Oh man, how did I have one? She had four. How did she do it?" And I think it coming back from that era where mothers weren't respected.
Yes, yes,
Mothers
yes,
should have been respected, and I think
yes.
we're seeing that within our society. And if I go so hard, if anybody's thinking about retaining retention, not just of their employees but of their mind, reading your book will help them to see like our culture has taken a big hit. And I think that concept of not respecting the hand that feeds you, the hand that cares for your very existence. But you don't just talk. What I love about your book, you don't just talk about problems. You offer like a realistic solution, and one of it is the Ctrl+Alt+Delete, which I think is phenomenal because we do it as a millennial. That's our go-to when things are not working. And obviously, right now, no matter what your background, race, ethnicity, country, whatever, we are realizing things are not working. And so we need Ctrl+Alt+Delete. Can you share a little bit of that with us?
Well, when something happens, when an event happens, I think it helps you to be aware of your thought pattern. So, for example, I'll give you an example. A physician walks onto the floor and he's obviously angry. You can just tell by his gesture. He sits down, the way he pulls out the chair, the way he throws down, and you're thinking, wow, I mean, I'm going to stay away from him. He must be angry. But wait a minute, why would you assume that? Maybe there's an alternative. So why don't you ask him? I, you know, why are, you seem upset today? Is something going on? And and you just delete the old thought and you allow space for a new reality, for a new perception. And after we asked the physician, why are you so upset? He looked at everyone and everyone's heart just opened up when he said, it's Saturday. I was supposed to be home 2 hours ago for my son's 4th birthday party and I'm missing it. Now, instead, we could have been silent, but it allows you, that's just a simple example, but there's lots of somebody rolls their eyes at me. I mean, oh, she must not like me. Well, maybe there's an alternative for that. I noticed you rolled your eyes when you saw me.
Yeah.
Is that because you didn't want to work with me today? I mean, simply saying I noticed that is another tool along with Ctrl+Alt+Delete. I mean, we make so many assumptions, and I think that's what's so good about that tool. We just delete the thoughts that are so, we assume them. We assume the worst. Somebody doesn't like us. They don't want to work with us. They don't like our idea. And this comes from what? Self-esteem. So if somebody said, summarize 20 years of listening to stories and teaching people across the United States and Canada, I would summarize it in one sentence. Self-esteem, voice, and power, they're all the same word. They're synonyms. When you can speak, you stay in your power. When you're in your power, your self-esteem. You're in your self-esteem. You're in yourself.
And something I wanted to go back to is when you were talking about the Ctrl+Alt+Delete and changing that talk in your head, in your mind. It changes your assumptions to curious perceptions.
Yes.
So now instead of saying, "Oh, this is what that means," and then you shut it down, now you're saying, well, this is what I perceive, but let me see if this is true, which opens up conversation. Am
Right.
I getting the flavor
You were
of what
doing
you're
it
talking?
better than I did it, Casey. That's exactly right. You're turning your assumptions to curiosity. You're being an open person. You're not working out of, just this rote messaging that's in your head that is really automatic. So you're challenging your automatic programming.
Yes, yes. And you know, with so much innovation happening, as I read your book, what you said in your book was exactly what I said to a nurse during an innovation, where so many of the problems that we face within our systems is because of a lack of or inadequate communication. So you talk about CSI instead of crime scene investigation, communication scene investigation. And I think what a brilliant, brilliant thing to call out, because our communication is the lifeblood of our process.
Well, Scott Peck said our communication isn't about the relationship. It is the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if we can learn to debrief too, even just briefly, like what went great on the last shift. I mean, and what could we do better tomorrow? People would answer that question, and as everybody speaks their truth, then the unit just keeps getting better and better and better.
So, what would you say for nurses and others who realize that they're in really toxic situations, that where they are, there is no resolution? Change can happen, but everyone is resistant to it. What would you
Yeah.
say?
Well, the first thing I think that new nurses need to know is that all nursing units are not the same. There's some great units out there. There's a lot of synergy. People respect it. They have a great day and they really enjoy their work. So it does get to the point where if it's that toxic, you need to think about whether you belong there. The second, because there are other options. There's just great nurses, great managers, and great hospitals out there, and you deserve that. The second thing is to quietly point out the reality that everybody's so used to that it's become their new normal. So I noticed that nobody talks to each other during lunch. I noticed that the same people, hang out together all the time. I noticed that smokers get more breaks than non-smokers. I noticed there's an oppressive air around here when I come in the morning. Does anybody else notice that? I mean, to start the dialogue. See,
Yeah.
with this environment. So the new person coming into any unit is the one who can see the clearest
Mm-hmm.
because you're new.
Mm-hmm.
So people should be asking that new person, what do you notice?
So this is really important. So for people who are struggling with retaining employees, a lot of people are leaving, or a lot of people right now they're facing pandemic depression. Just finding something positive, even if not about yourself, but for someone else, it actually affects your brain. Is that what you're saying?
It sure does. It sure does. It affects your brain to pay attention to the affections of people around you and to create that team. And to do that, you have to make the time to do it. But for people who have been in the pandemic for a really long time, use the military, look at what the military does when they're in combat for long periods of time. Instead of focusing on work, they start focusing on when they're not at work. And they start making sure that they tell the soldiers what did you do this week for you? Where's the time of the day that's just you? Tell me about something that raised your vibration.
Mm,
Tell me what you did that you gotta build up you can't be exhausted at work and exhausted at home.
that's
You
true.
you can't do both.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically I would tell my staff there's things I can control and things I can't. Look at the things you can control. I mean, so one nurse was saying, oh my gosh, we can't control the patients that are coming to this floor. And I'm like, yeah, but we can control what beds we put them into. So let's put the easy patients in these beds and give them to the newer nurse. Oh yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, like, just things I can control and things I can't.
So you talked about communication and you talked about confidence. And if someone is watching this and they're like, well, how would someone teach it? You really, in the book, you really highlighted how as experienced nurses, you could teach it as clinical instructors, you could teach it as faculty, administration. You teach it not just by by words, but our actions and
Well,
interaction.
you make it, yeah, and you make it relevant too. I mean, you just hand out index cards to your class or to your the people you work with, and you just say, write on this index card a conversation that you're afraid to have. What is it about? And then fold it in half and throw it into this box, and that becomes your competency for your unit in your classroom.
I've had John Silva, I've had Leanne Meyer. What I really appreciate about your this interview and the thoughts that we discuss, like rebooting the conversation in our head, the conversation in our atmosphere. You speak a lot to culture and the culture within the healthcare system. And I feel as though a lot of what you're pushing for is a shift or a paradigm shift within the culture.
Absolutely right. I want it to make a 180-degree turn. I don't want, and in order for that to happen, we have to decide if is healthcare a commodity or is it a service?
If anyone loves this conversation, how will they hear more about you aside from the book?
I mean, I'm on LinkedIn and I'm
You're on
available.
LinkedIn.
You have my contact information is everywhere. I mean, people call
Yes.
me on my cell phone, and and I answer.
Yes.
I'm happy to have conversations with people about anything.
I thank you so much for your time. I am going to have you back. I know I will. I want to hear about all the work that you're doing. And like I tell all my other guests, I am trying to I really do believe nurses are going to transform healthcare. I just want to catch the wave. Before it happens, I don't want to wait and say 200 years ago, there was this nurse called Kathleen Bartholomew. No, I want it to be recorded. I want to capture your passion and your work. So
Oh,
thank you
thank
so much.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate all that you do, and you
Yes.
are the spark that is love.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I love it. I love it.